when my wife said over dinner, "You need to grow up and learn what love really means." After I asked about our lack of intimacy, I quietly made my decision. The words hung in the air like a death sentence for our marriage, but she had no idea what she just unleashed. As a senior financial analyst who'd built my career on recognizing patterns and calculating risk, I'd already been documenting the systematic erosion of our relationship for months. What she saw as my acceptance of her boundaries was actually me gathering data for the most important analysis of my life. The conversation that ended everything had started innocently enough. We were eating the pasta dinner I'd cooked, discussing our respective days, when I gently brought up something that had been weighing on my mind. "I've been thinking about us lately, about how we connect as a couple." Her fork paused halfway to her mouth, and I saw that familiar tension creep into her shoulders. "We haven't been intimate in over 2 months, and when I try to initiate any physical affection, you seem relieved when I back off." Her response was swift and defensive. "Here we go again with the pressure. I thought we'd move past this phase where you make everything about sex." The dismissive tone stung, but I pressed on because this conversation felt crucial. "It's not just about sex, Emma. It's about feeling wanted by my own wife. When I reach for your hand, you pull away. When I suggest we shower together, you find 17 different excuses. When I hug you from behind while you're cooking, you go rigid like I'm a stranger, touching you inappropriately." She set down her fork with deliberate force. "Maybe because you are being inappropriate. Just because we're married doesn't mean you get unlimited access to my body whenever you want it. I have boundaries, and mature husbands respect those boundaries." The word mature carried a condescending edge that made my jaw clench. "I'm not talking about unlimited access. I'm talking about basic marital intimacy. We've been intimate exactly 6 times in the past year, Emma. 6 times. And each time felt like you were enduring it rather than enjoying it." Her laugh was sharp and humorless. "Oh, so now you're keeping score? How romantic. This is exactly what I mean about pressure. You've turned something that should be natural into a performance metric." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face with the same analytical approach I used for complex financial projections. "You're right. I have been keeping track. Want to know what else I've been tracking? Your mood patterns. You're measurably happier on days when I don't initiate any physical contact. You're more talkative, more relaxed, more affectionate in non-physical ways. It's like you prefer the version of our marriage where I don't want you." The accusation hit its mark. Her face flushed, and she shifted uncomfortably. "That's not... You're twisting things. I just don't need constant physical validation to feel loved. Some of us value emotional connection and intellectual compatibility over physical stuff." There it was again. Physical stuff. Like intimacy with her husband was some juvenile obsession I should have outgrown. "But I do need it, Emma. Physical intimacy isn't separate from emotional connection for me. It's how I express love, how I feel loved, how I connect with my partner on the deepest level." Her expression hardened into something between pity and irritation. "Then maybe you need to examine why you can't feel loved without constant physical gratification. Maybe the problem isn't me being cold or distant. Maybe the problem is you being obsessed with sex and not understanding what real love looks like." Each word felt like a calculated strike designed to make me feel ashamed of my needs. "So what does real love look like to you, Emma?" She straightened in her chair, clearly pleased to have the opportunity to educate me. "Friendship, companionship, emotional support, shared goals and values, respect for boundaries, all the things that last when physical attraction fades and people mature beyond their base instincts." She was describing a business partnership, not a marriage. "And if your partner can't be happy without those base instincts?" I asked quietly. That's when she delivered the line that ended everything. "Then you need to grow up and learn what love really means. Not everyone is obsessed with sex. Some of us value emotional connection and intellectual compatibility more than physical stuff." I sat there for a long moment, processing the full implications of what she'd just said. My wife had essentially told me that wanting physical intimacy with her was a character flaw, a sign of immaturity, evidence that I didn't understand real love. She'd pathologized normal marital desire and positioned herself as the more evolved partner who transcended such juvenile needs. More than that, she'd made it clear that she considered a marriage without physical intimacy to be superior to one with it. As a financial analyst specializing in corporate restructuring, I'd spent years identifying failing partnerships and calculating the cost-benefit of dissolution versus attempted repair. The metrics of our relationship were undeniable: declining frequency of intimacy, increasing resentment around physical needs, fundamental incompatibility in relationship expectations, and now open contempt for my attempts to address these issues. Any reasonable analysis pointed to one conclusion: this partnership was unsalvageable. But unlike the corporate restructurings I handled professionally, this wasn't just about cutting losses. This was about a woman who'd systematically eroded physical intimacy in our marriage while simultaneously reframing my needs as character defects. She wanted me to celebrate the death of passion in our relationship and be grateful for the privilege of emotional support and shared expenses. She'd created a framework where wanting my own wife made me the problem. I had advantages she didn't realize, though. My salary as a senior analyst at Blackstone Financial was $127,000 annually, significantly higher than her $68,000 marketing coordinator position. Our mortgage was in both names, but I'd been making the larger payments and building equity faster than she understood. More importantly, I had professional relationships with some of the city's best divorce attorneys from my work on corporate dissolutions. I understood asset protection, financial disclosure requirements, and negotiation strategy better than most people going through divorce. Over the next 2 weeks, I conducted what I privately called the marriage audit. Every interaction became data. Every conversation revealed patterns. When I initiated any physical contact, holding hands during a movie, kissing her goodbye in the morning, putting my arm around her while we watched TV, her body language was consistent: subtle stiffening, shortened duration of contact, visible relief when it ended. But when I maintained distance, treated her like a friendly roommate, kept conversations light and non-romantic, she was noticeably more relaxed, talkative, even affectionate in carefully non-physical ways. The most telling experiment came during week 3 of my analysis. I spent an entire week treating her exactly like she seemed to want. No romantic gestures, no physical initiation, no suggestions of intimacy, no lingering kisses or meaningful touches. Just companionship, conversation, and emotional support. Her mood improved dramatically. She hummed while making breakfast. She planned social activities with enthusiasm. She talked about her day with genuine animation. She was measurably happier when I stopped wanting her. That's when I understood the full scope of what I was dealing with. This wasn't about boundaries or stress or temporary relationship challenges. This was about fundamental incompatibility disguised as moral superiority. She'd convinced herself that her aversion to physical intimacy was actually emotional maturity, that my need for physical connection was a character weakness, and that a marriage without passion was somehow more noble than one with it. Armed with this data, I made an appointment with David Harrison, a partner at Harrison Family Law whom I'd worked with during the Henderson Industries dissolution. David specialized in high-asset divorces and had a reputation for protecting his clients' interests while maintaining professional dignity. Our consultation was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon when Emma would be at her monthly book club meeting. "Walk me through the situation," David said, pulling out a legal pad as I settled into the leather chair across from his desk. I appreciated his direct approach. No false sympathy or relationship counseling attempts, just professional assessment of the legal landscape. 3-year marriage, fundamental incompatibility around intimacy expectations. Wife has made it clear she considers my needs to be character flaws rather than legitimate relationship requirements. David nodded, making notes. Any attempts at counseling? I've suggested it multiple times. She refuses, saying the problem is my unrealistic expectations, not any issue with our relationship dynamic. From her perspective, everything is perfect now that I've stopped being pushy about physical connection. He looked up from his notes. How are the finances structured? This is where my professional background became crucial. Joint checking for household expenses, but we've maintained separate savings accounts. Mortgage is joint, but I've been contributing about 60% of the payments due to income differential. No significant joint investments beyond the house. I've been documenting all financial contributions for the past 6 months. David's eyebrows rose slightly. Anticipating this conversation? I'm a financial analyst. I document everything by nature, But yes, I've been more systematic lately. We spent the next hour reviewing asset division, scenarios, timeline expectations, and strategic considerations. David's assessment was straightforward. Given our relatively short marriage, limited joint assets, and clear financial contribution disparities, I was in a strong position for equitable division rather than community property complications. More importantly, Emma's stated preferences actually supported my position. She'd repeatedly expressed happiness with the relationship when I wasn't pressuring her for intimacy, which could be documented as evidence that we wanted fundamentally different marriages. "One more question," David said as we wrapped up. "Any chance of reconciliation through compromise?" I thought about Emma's words at dinner, her relief when I stopped wanting her, her conviction that my needs were character flaws. No, she's not interested in compromise. She wants a roommate who splits bills and provides emotional support. I want a marriage that includes physical intimacy. Those positions aren't negotiable. Over the following week, I systematically organized all our financial documents, created detailed spreadsheets of asset contributions, and established separate accounts for the transition period. My analytical approach to the dissolution was the same methodology I used for corporate restructurings: clear documentation, strategic timing, minimal emotional drama, and focus on equitable outcomes rather than punitive measures. The most crucial element was timing. Emma's book club met every second Tuesday, giving me a consistent 3-hour window for meetings with David and preparation activities. Her predictable schedule worked in my favor. She'd established routines that minimized our alone time together, apparently preferring the buffer of social activities to extended private conversations about our relationship. On a Wednesday evening in late November, Emma made a comment that confirmed my decision was the right one. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, maintaining the careful physical distance that had become our norm, when she stretched contentedly and said, "This is perfect. This is exactly how marriage should be. Comfortable, peaceful, no pressure, no expectations. I'm so glad you finally understand what really matters." She was celebrating the death of passion in our marriage and expecting me to celebrate with her. That's when I realized she didn't want a husband at all. She wanted a financially contributing roommate who provided emotional support without the inconvenience of physical desires. She'd achieved her ideal relationship, all the benefits of marriage with none of the intimacy that made her uncomfortable. The next morning, I called David to schedule the filing. "I want this to be as amicable as possible," I told him. "She's going to be shocked because she genuinely believes our marriage is perfect now, but I'm not interested in punishment or drama, just fair division and clean dissolution." David assured me the paperwork would be ready by Friday, and we scheduled the service for the following Monday when Emma would be at work. I spent the weekend making practical arrangements. I'd already secured a furnished apartment downtown, close to my office and convenient for the transition period. My brother Mark had agreed to help with the move, and we'd scheduled it for the Tuesday when Emma would be at book club. The symmetry felt appropriate. She'd be discussing whatever romance novel they were reading, while I removed myself from the marriage she'd systematically drained of romance. Monday morning proceeded normally. Emma made coffee, chatted about her plans for the day, kissed my cheek goodbye with the casual affection of a sister rather than a wife. She had no idea that divorce papers would be delivered to her office within hours, or that I'd already begun the process of separating our finances. Her contentment with our relationship had made her completely oblivious to my growing dissatisfaction with it. The call came at, "What the hell is this?" Emma's voice was shrill with shock and anger. "Divorce papers? Are you insane? We don't have problems. We worked everything out. You said you understood what really mattered." The irony was palpable. She was genuinely bewildered that I would leave a marriage she considered perfect because I'd stopped wanting her. "I do understand what really matters, Emma. That's why I'm leaving." My voice was calm, professional, the same tone I used for difficult client conversations. "You wanted a husband who didn't pressure you for physical intimacy. You got that. But I want a wife who wants me, not someone who's relieved when I don't want her. Those are incompatible requirements." The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Then she spoke, her voice smaller, uncertain. "This is about sex? You're ending our marriage because I don't want sex constantly?" Even facing divorce papers, she was still minimizing my needs and exaggerating my expectations. No, Emma, this is about you celebrating the absence of desire in our marriage while I grieve the loss of physical connection with my wife. This is about fundamental incompatibility that you refuse to acknowledge because you got what you wanted. The next few weeks were a masterclass in delayed recognition. Emma called repeatedly, left voicemails ranging from angry to pleading to confused. She couldn't understand how I could leave a good marriage over physical stuff. She enlisted her sister Lisa to call me, attempting intervention. She showed up at my office twice before security made it clear she needed to schedule appointments through proper channels. Each interaction revealed the same fundamental disconnect. She genuinely believed a marriage where the wife celebrated her husband's lack of desire was a successful marriage being destroyed by his unreasonable expectations. The divorce proceedings moved smoothly thanks to David's expertise and my thorough documentation. Emma's attorney tried to argue for reconciliation through counseling, but David presented evidence of Emma's stated preferences for a marriage without physical intimacy alongside documentation of my attempts to address the issue through communication. The court recognized that fundamental incompatibility around intimacy expectations constituted irreconcilable differences, especially when one spouse viewed the other's needs as character flaws. Emma's testimony during the proceedings was particularly revealing. She maintained that I had suddenly changed and become unreasonably demanding about physical attention, abandoning a perfectly good marriage over sex. She characterized our relationship as happy and stable until I decided to throw it all away over physical issues. The court records show her claiming I never complained about our arrangement until I suddenly left, despite months of documented attempts to discuss our intimacy issues. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Emma kept the house, but struggled with the mortgage payments on her single income, something my financial analysis had predicted. I learned through mutual friends that she'd expected me to return within days, viewing my departure as a temporary tantrum rather than a permanent decision based on fundamental incompatibility. The most satisfying vindication came 8 months after the divorce when I ran into Emma at a downtown coffee shop. She looked older, tired, like someone who'd been struggling with unexpected responsibilities. "We need to talk," she said, sitting uninvited at my table. "I've been thinking about everything that happened. Maybe I was too rigid about some things. Maybe we could try again." "What's changed?" I asked, genuinely curious about her answer. "I understand now that physical stuff is important to some people. I could try to be more accommodating." Even offering reconciliation, she was framing my needs as quirky preferences she could tolerate rather than legitimate relationship requirements. "That's not what I wanted, Emma. I never wanted you to accommodate my needs. I wanted a wife who shared them." She stared at me for a long moment, confusion and frustration warring in her expression. "I did love you, just not in that way." The admission was more honest than anything she'd said during our marriage. "Then you wanted a friend who paid half the bills, not a husband," I replied quietly. I left her sitting there and haven't spoken to her since. A year later, I heard through mutual connections that Emma was struggling with dating. Apparently, most men expected physical intimacy at some point in relationships, and she couldn't understand why modern dating was so pressure-filled and demanding. She'd started posting on social media about unrealistic expectations in relationships and the toxic nature of physical desire. She'd learned nothing from our marriage except confirmation that men who wanted intimacy were the problem. 2 years post-divorce, I met Rachel through my brother's wedding. She was a financial planner who understood both professional demands and personal needs. The difference was immediate and startling. Rachel viewed physical intimacy as an expression of emotional connection rather than an unfortunate obligation. She initiated contact as often as I did, treated desire as a gift rather than a burden, and understood that passion enhanced emotional bonds rather than competing with them. "I can't imagine being married to someone who didn't want me," Rachel said one evening when I told her about my previous marriage. "How lonely that must have been, lying next to someone who was happier when you didn't want them." The word lonely captured exactly what I'd experienced, but hadn't fully articulated during the marriage. Meanwhile, Emma continued posting about her dating difficulties and the impossibility of finding mature men who didn't make relationships all about sex. 3 years after our divorce, I learned she was seeing a therapist who'd suggested her intimacy issues might stem from deeper emotional connection problems. She'd fired that therapist and found another who validated her belief that society places too much emphasis on physical connection in romantic relationships. 5 years later, Emma had achieved exactly what she'd wanted, a life completely free from the pressure of someone wanting her physically. No expectations, no drama around intimacy, no husband making demands based on base instincts. She was completely alone, still posting about the impossibility of finding someone who understood that real love didn't require physical expression. She'd gotten precisely what she'd asked for and seemed genuinely puzzled why it hadn't brought her happiness. The most haunting aspect isn't that our marriage ended. Sometimes dissolution is the healthiest outcome for everyone involved. What haunts me is that Emma celebrated its ending every single day and expected me to celebrate with her. She thought she'd successfully trained me to want less, never realizing she'd taught me that I deserved more. She wanted companionship without passion, support without desire, marriage without intimacy. She got exactly that. A perfectly passionless life where no one would ever again pressure her with inconvenient needs like wanting her. And according to mutual friends, she still tells people I left out of nowhere for no real reason, genuinely believing that a marriage where the wife celebrates her husband's lack of desire was a good marriage destroyed by his unreasonable expectations. Sometimes I wonder if she ever reflects on that dinner conversation, those words that ended everything. You need to grow up and learn what love really means. She'd meant to educate me about mature love transcending physical needs. Instead, she taught me that real love includes wanting and being wanted, that mature relationships balance emotional and physical intimacy, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is leave someone who's genuinely happier without you.